The dark forest swallowed everything around, and only the weak moonlight broke through the thick branches. The small figures, hiding among the trees, listened intently to any sound. Every breath, every rustle of leaves seemed to them a threat. Their families had died, and their houses had turned to ashes just yesterday. And now they were left alone, children whom the war had turned into shadows. Their hearts were beating fast. Their eyes were filled with fear and hatred. Every movement was cautious, every word deliberate. They did not yet understand that they had lost more than their home or their parents, that their childhood was gone, but they felt a void that could not be filled. Standing nearby was their mentor, a former warrior, silently watching them. His eyes were cold and sharp as a blade, and his hands were tirelessly tightening the ropes for the training that would begin in the morning. At night, he did not interfere, but his presence was felt more strongly than any scream. The children felt that they were under constant surveillance, and that every mistake could cost them dearly. Fatigue and fear intertwined, and even those who usually faced danger bravely bowed before the cold authority of their mentor. One of the boys stumbled and fell, barely holding back tears. The mentor only nodded and retreated into the shadows. No words of support, no explanations, only silence and the feeling that now they belonged to this forest as it belonged to them. They soon realized that this path was through pain and fear, that every hour spent in the darkness taught them not so much to survive as to surrender to their own fears. The fire in their hearts was kindled by the desire for revenge, by despair, and by the understanding that they had no other choice. They were still children, but the forest and their mentor were making them warriors who would learn the world through shadows, suffering, and strict discipline. They arrived at the shelter early in the morning, still in the darkness. The wooden buildings looked fragile, but inside there was an order that resembled a fortress. There was no place for tears and weakness, and the children felt it immediately. The mentors, former warriors, were waiting for them without a word. Their gazes were sharp as blades. The first day began with strict discipline. The children had to perform endless exercises, standing on the cold floor, running through puddles and stones, training in the accuracy of movements and observation. Every mistake was punished, from physical pain to humiliation in front of others. One of the boys dropped his sword during the exercise, and the mentor shouted, forcing him to repeat the movements until complete exhaustion. Tired hands were held only by willpower, and his heart was beating so hard that it seemed like it was about to burst out of his chest. But not only the body was put to the test. The teachers were perfect masters of psychological pressure. They forced the children to observe the mistakes of others, ridiculed those who stopped in fear, creating constant tension among the students and a feeling that every step could be the last in this world of childhood. During exercises that simulated combat situations, the mentors deliberately created chaos, noise, screams, unexpected attacks, in order to test the reaction and ability to act under stress. No one dared to argue. No one dared to cry. They were children, but they were becoming shadows. The fire of revenge that burned in their hearts was mixed with constant fear, fear of pain, of their mentor, and of themselves. Every day reinforced the lesson. Survival required strength, and strength came at a cost, sometimes more than life itself. And when evening fell on the shelter, the children, exhausted and silent, lay on the cold floor and counted the hours until the next morning. Each hour gave knowledge, but took away a piece of their innocence. The forest, the night, and the mentors become their mentors at the same time, harsh, cold, and ruthless, like the war itself that took their families. Darkness covered the forest, and the children moved silently among the trees, practically merging with the shadows. Their hearts were beating as if they wanted to burst out of their chests, and their breathing became noisy from the cold and tension. The mentor was silent somewhere nearby, only watching and recording every movement. Their first task was simple in theory, to watch over a clan post guarding a local road. But the reality was ruthless. One of the children, usually calm and cautious, failed to notice the night movement and accidentally broke a branch. A sound rang out through the silence, and the mentor instantly ordered him to stay put while the rest of the group completed the task. The boy stood still, his heart beating wildly, his hands trembling. The mentor approached without saying a word, only pointing to a cold pit dug especially for punishments during training. The child found himself inside, and the cold earth under his feet pierced his bones, while the mentor stood over him, watching to see if he would break the rules. No one helped. No one spoke. This was part of the lesson. Survival required endurance, otherwise a mistake could cost him his life. Other children, watching their friends struggle with fear and pain, felt a mixture of terror and a new realization. To be a shadow means to remain calm, even when the world tries to destroy you from within. Every step, every breath, every look is a workout not only for the body, but also for the soul, tested again and again by the mentors. As the night wore on, the children returned to the shelter, exhausted and silent. The fire of revenge in their hearts burned brighter, for the first fear and the first near loss had shown how high the price of their journey would be. They could no longer return to their past lives, and the forest, their mentor, and their own fears became the only reality where their skills were formed, and with them their souls. The following days became an endless cycle of pain and discipline. They would wake up before dawn, and every move would be checked to the last second. The instructors would watch their stamina, who would collapse from fatigue, who would get scared, who would doubt. The children would perform exercises that made them shiver from cold and exhaustion. Meditations on stones, running through rain and mud, training with sharp swords, where any mistake could result in serious injury. No less suffering was brought by psychological exercises. The mentors arranged situations that forced the children to choose between loyalty to the group and their own safety, forced them to observe the mistakes of their comrades, and taught them to feel fear without the right to make mistakes. One of the children during training, when the mentor suddenly created chaos, fell and almost fell into the river, and the others were forced to continue the exercise while he corrected the mistake. The words of the mentors were cold and merciless. If you can't stand the pain today, you can't stand the enemy tomorrow, the old warrior repeated, like a ghost of the past that haunted their childish steps. The children no longer laughed, didn't talk unnecessarily, didn't allow themselves weaknesses. Every mistake, every broken movement was a lesson that was etched deep in their souls. Fatigue and fear mixed with tiny glimmers of pride. Every day the children learned a little more about themselves, but at the same time they lost a part of their childhood. They became stronger, but heavier for the soul. The forest and the school turned into a forge, where bodies were forged, but souls were also tested to the limit of humanity. The fire in the children's hearts burned brighter and brighter, but no longer only from the desire for revenge. It flared from fear, pain, and endless tension that shaped their every step. The feeling of anxiety slowly turned into a burden that weighed on each of them. Every day of trials and constant supervision by their mentors made the children look at each other with suspicion. Fatigue and fear eroded trust, and even the closest friends began to doubt who was real and who was weak. During one night's exercise, the instructors deliberately separated the group, leaving the children without communication and forcing them to complete dangerous tasks alone. One of the boys, fearing punishment for his own mistake, decided to betray his comrades and deliberately told the instructor about their hiding place. His gaze was full of fear and at the same time despair. He knew that this action could save his own life, but at the same time put others at risk. The mentor, having learned about the violation of the rules, did not intervene immediately. He watched as the tension grew, as the children felt the cold breath of betrayal among their own. When one of the comrades stumbled into a trap and narrowly escaped injury, everyone understood. Now even friendship and oaths were no longer a protection. That night, the group returned to the shelter, silent and tense. Everyone thought about their own decisions, about what was right and what was betrayal. The children could no longer rely on themselves alone. They had to learn to evaluate each step of their comrade, each look, each gesture. The fear that had been born from the mentors now blossomed within the group, making them shadows not only outside, but also inside themselves. The following days became even harder. The instructors left no room for error, their demands increasing with each exercise. The children ran across the cold stones, holding swords, practicing the precision of their movements to exhaustion, repeating the same thing hundreds of times until their hands trembled and their feet lost the feeling of the ground. Each fall was accompanied by a harsh reprimand and additional punishment, and those who could not stand it were left alone with fear and cold. The psychological tests became even more dangerous. The instructors made the children watch others make mistakes, and again created chaos, screams, unexpected attacks, darkness, noise, and the cold waters of the stream. One of the children fell during the exercise, sustaining an injury, and the instructor only coldly pointed out another route, forcing the child to crawl while the group completed the task. But the most terrifying thing was not the physical exertion, but the losses. During a simulated combat situation, one of the younger students was seriously injured, and although the mentors did not intervene, the children saw how real the cost of mistakes can be. They realized that their actions were no longer just exercises, they were a test of survival. Fatigue, pain, and fear intertwined, and the fire of revenge that burned in the hearts of the children made them more persistent. They learned to endure pain, to fight with themselves, with their own doubts. The forest and their mentors molded warriors out of them. Every movement became a test of will, and every breath a lesson in survival. The shadow of their childhood gradually weakened, giving way to cold, sharp discipline. The night was thick and heavy, like a sheet of lead, as the children quietly approached the enemy clan post. They moved cautiously, every sound loud, every movement a risk. Hearts pounded, and hands clutched swords and bows, ready for any enemy. The mentor watched from his hiding place, silent and cold, not interfering, only recording their actions. The first few minutes seemed almost calm. The children watched the guards, studied their patrols, counted their steps, and coordinated their gestures with each other. But suddenly the situation got out of control. One of the new students, frightened by the darkness and the pressure, accidentally fell into a dry branch, which cracked with a loud sound. The guards instantly turned in their direction, and chaos began. Everyone moved at lightning speed, but at the moment of the attack, an unexpected turn occurred. A familiar figure appeared among the guards, one of the former students of the School of Shadows, who had long disappeared after being lost during training. He sided with the enemy, and his knowledge of the training methods and movements of the children gave the enemy an advantage. The children's hearts sank in shock. Betrayal among the enemy turned out to be knowledge that they could now use against them. The boys and girls fought for their lives and to avoid defeat, but the first injuries and falls made the chaotic battle even more brutal. The mentor, silently observing, did not intervene. The children understood that a mistake is not only physical. It can cost trust and even life, especially when old acquaintances become enemies. When the night was over, the survivors returned silent and exhausted. Their hearts were beating wildly, but inside they had a new understanding. War is not just about the outside. It is about betrayal, fear, and moral challenges. And even in the darkest night, the unexpected emerges. Former friends can become enemies, and the knowledge of a mentor can become a trap from which there is no escape. After the night battle, the atmosphere among the children changed forever. They returned to the shelter silent, their faces empty, and their hearts heavy with fear and shock. But it was not only the external trials that frightened them now. Now old secrets, hidden feelings and fears that their mentors had never allowed to manifest were coming to the surface. One of the older boys confessed that he had deliberately retreated during the fight to save himself, leaving his less experienced comrade in danger. His words rang out like a blade, and the group, accustomed to trusting each other, instantly felt a cold wall of suspicion. Those who had previously considered themselves strong and loyal began to doubt their own beliefs, their ability to see the world in black and white categories. The mentors noticed this and seized the moment. They created a series of psychological games. Everyone had to make decisions that tested their loyalty to the oath of revenge, while using hidden facts from the children's past against themselves. Some turned out to be capable of cruelty in order to survive, others of betrayal in order to preserve themselves. Amidst the tension, an unexpected twist occurred. One of those who was considered weak and defenseless showed extraordinary determination and skills acquired during the secret training he conducted on his own. He was able to save a comrade from a trap set by the mentor, and in doing so, overturned the balance of trust within the group. The children understood that even in the darkest moments, the ability to act wisely and courageously can change the course of events, and strength is not always where you expect it. Tired, but at the same time stronger, they understood that every step on this path was now connected not only with survival, but also with a choice, to trust or doubt, to fight or retreat, to preserve humanity or to submit to the cold logic of war. The forest and the school became not just a workout for the body. They tested the soul, forcing children to uncover the secrets of the past and choose who they would become in this world. The shelter grew even colder as the mentors began the final stages of preparation for the great strike against the enemy clan. The children trained day and night, barely finding the strength to stand, while the mentors watched like ghosts, ready to punish at any moment for the slightest mistake. But something new was brewing among the students, despair that turned into rebellion. One of the older boys, who had seen too much suffering and injustice, couldn't stand it. He raised his voice, for the first time in his life, to his mentor. "We are not just instruments of your revenge. We are people, not shadows of your orders." His words echoed through the shelter like the cry of a torn heart. The teacher was at first silent in surprise, and then shouted the command. "If you want to rebel, show whether you can withstand the consequences." The children froze, realizing that no one knew how this conflict would end. The eldest student, despite his fear, rushed to the gate, and the others either followed him or remained in tense anticipation, looking at this determination. The dispute turned into a test not only of physical but also of moral strength. Some students felt their own freedom of choice and the fear that accompanies it for the first time. The mentor applied psychological pressure methods even more strictly, creating imitations of fatal mistakes and dangerous traps. But the senior student, leading part of the group, showed that even in the grip of cruelty one can find one's own way and fight for it. Tired, wounded, but determined, the children realized that the mentor was not all-powerful. He only formed a shadow that they could now turn into their own path. This night was a turning point. Not only the skills, but also the spirit of the children obeyed their own will, and not someone else's icy discipline. The forest and the shelter remained witnesses to the fact that even in the midst of suffering and fear, the ability to rebel can become a new strength. Dawn brought no relief. It only heightened the severity of the coming battle. The children, exhausted and wounded, prepared to meet the enemy clan, knowing that this would not be a training exercise, but a real war. The mentors remained silent, watching as those who had rebelled led the group forward. The first clashes were brutal. The children, who had previously trained only in simulated conditions, were faced with the cold reality: gunshots, screams, falling comrades. One of the younger students was seriously injured and could not continue moving. The others had to choose: leave him and move on, or risk their own lives trying to pull their friend out of danger. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected moment came. The older student, who had rebelled against his mentor, showed incredible courage and strategy, saving several of his comrades from the enemy's trap. But his actions could not save everyone. 2 children died, and their shadows, who had been playing in the forest yesterday, disappeared forever. The group was in shock. They realized that revenge would cost more than they could have imagined. The fire in the children's hearts had burned brightly, but now it was mixed with pain and guilt. Those who survived became even closer, but at the same time they realized that their hearts and souls were forever scarred, and even their own will, manifested in the rebellion, could not protect against real loss. The mentors remained silent, watching the children struggle with their first real experience of death and loss, knowing that this was only the beginning, and that each subsequent step would be even tougher, even harder, and even more ruthless. The enemy clan had not expected such determination from the children. When the group, exhausted and wounded, appeared on the outskirts of the camp, the guards at first laughed, underestimating their strength and organization. But the laughter quickly turned to tense silence when the eldest student, who had rebelled against his mentor, led the attack. His strategies and knowledge of the children's movements and training methods proved to be the key to unexpected maneuvers, and even the most experienced warriors of the clan found themselves under pressure. The enemy tried to use force and intimidation, but the children proved faster and more cunning, using the darkness, the forest, and their own skills learned under strict discipline. The front ranks of the clan began to panic as the young warriors broke through their defenses, unsettling even the older warriors. But the clan's response was not only physical. They began a psychological war: screams, traps, provocations, attempts to separate the children and instill fear. Some children could barely stand on their feet from fatigue and injuries. The senior student was forced to make snap decisions, and a mistake could cost everyone their lives. Despite everything, the children continued to move forward, not retreating, trained to be afraid, but at the same time to act boldly. Their first blow made the clan think. These children are not just orphans, not just trained shadows. They became a living fire of revenge, a force that combined fear and determination, the cruelty of training and the desire to survive. The enemy clan realized that underestimating the young students had become a costly mistake. The forest, the night, and the dark paths the children traveled became a battlefield where young warriors proved that even those who seem weak and small can turn the tide of the enemy's fate. And while the losses remained and the pain did not go away, the clan understood one thing. These children are not just victims of war. They are shadows carrying their own revenge, and they will have to be reckoned with. Night fell over the forest and the clan camp as the children moved forward for the final blow. Every step was deliberate, every movement the result of days of training, fear, and loss. The mentors watched silently from the shadows, knowing that this trial would test everyone's limits, both physical and moral. The senior disciple, who had risen earlier, led the group, displaying new determination and cunning. They attacked unexpectedly, moving like shadows, disappearing and reappearing in the most unexpected places. The front ranks of the clan were broken, but the enemy quickly rallied, and the battle turned into a chaos of death and pain. The children felt tired and afraid, but every blow, every movement was filled with the memory of their fallen comrades and what they had learned in the School of Shadows. Blood and darkness merged into a single stream, where childhood was left behind, and only skill, cunning, and cold determination remained. The unexpected turn of events occurred when a section of the clan decided to resort to trickery. They set fire to several trees to separate the children. The fire spread quickly, the smoke and flames threatening to engulf everything around. The senior apprentice instantly oriented the group, using his knowledge of the forest and his own wits to walk through the flames and pull out those who remained injured. More children were lost that night, and even those who survived felt forever the weight of their choices and the price of revenge. But the fire and fear strengthened their resolve. They were no longer just orphans. They became shadows who understood that revenge was not about the power of the enemy, but about mastering their own fear and pain. When the night was over, the enemy clan was shattered, and the children stood, exhausted, wounded, but alive. Their eyes shone with new understanding. They had been through pain, betrayal, fear, and loss, and now knew that the fire that burned in their hearts would never go out. It had taught them to survive, to fight, and to win, even when the cost was terrible. The fire of battle died down, and the night enveloped the forest in a silence that was heavier than any screams. The children, exhausted by losses, physical pain, and constant pressure from their mentors, finally felt for the first time how fear and fatigue completely consumed them. Some stopped. Their legs no longer obeyed. Their hands trembled. Their hearts pounded wildly. They could no longer move. At that moment, the group broke up. Several of the weakest students, unable to withstand the psychological and physical strain, fell to the ground, their shadows merging with the darkness of the forest. They thought that peace would come, but it was only a short-lived mirage. From the depths of the forest, those they did not expect appeared, part of the enemy clan that had survived the battle and the mentors who followed. All who fell and could not move were defenseless. The fear that they had carried within them since the beginning of their training caught up with them at the most terrible moment. The children, who a moment ago considered themselves winners, now faced the inevitable price of choice. There was nowhere to retreat. Those who survived physically saw their comrades being caught up, and their hearts clenched with guilt and helplessness. Screams and moans filled the night, but mingled with cold silence as the mentors and the enemy completed their cruel lesson. The fire of revenge that once lived in the hearts of the children became a burning memory. Sometimes even strong shadows cannot escape the pressure, the fear, the consequences of their own decisions. The forest remained a witness to their fall and suffering. Only those who learned to conquer not only physical strength, but also their own fears remained. And although pain and loss forever shattered their childhood, those who survived understood one cruel truth. In a world where revenge is fire, even the strongest shadows can burn if they do not learn to survive in their own fear.